She whispered, "Don't embarrass me," and pointed me toward the service exit at my own company's gala. Minutes later, her new boss grabbed her arm, face pale. "Do you know who he is to me?" She thought she'd married a has-been. She had no idea I'd buried protections in every contract. "My name is Clayton Pierce. I'm 52, and 23 years ago, I opened my first boutique hotel in Charleston with savings from working double shifts as a night manager. That first property became 5, then 12, then 28 across 3 continents. Legacy Crest Hotels. 5-star properties hosting presidents, celebrities, people who never needed to prove they belonged. I met Paige 13 years ago at a conference in Dubai. She was 26, ambitious, working guest relations for a competitor. We married within a year. She climbed to VP of Guest Experience and Brand Strategy, while I stepped back to Chairman Emeritus, letting younger leadership handle operations. I thought I was building a legacy. I was just clearing the path for someone else. The Winter Gala was our 25th anniversary celebration at the Grandmont Hotel in Manhattan. Black tie, every board member and investor present. Paige had planned it for months with Spencer Mills, our new CEO. Spencer was 40, Harvard MBA, brought in 2 years ago to modernize operations. I'd mentored him myself. The night started fine. Navy tuxedo, her black gown with diamonds. We posed for cameras, smiled like always. But inside the ballroom, everything shifted. She scanned the room constantly, barely touching my arm. When Spencer arrived with his entourage, her entire posture changed. She straightened, smiled wider, and I became a shadow. I watched her work the crowd with grace I hadn't seen in months. Magnetic, commanding, always drifting back to Spencer. He held court near the bar, playing visionary leader. I stayed at the periphery with my scotch, observing. Then she appeared beside me, smile tight, voice urgent. "My new boss is here. Don't embarrass me," she whispered, fingers briefly touching my chest before pointing toward service exit. Her eyes never met mine. They were already calculating her next move. I nodded once and walked toward the dimly lit hallway. It smelled of industrial cleaner and catered food. A waiter passed, eyes flicking toward me with recognition, then away. I loosened my tie and leaned against the wall beside stacked equipment cases. Through the doorway, I watched her return to Spencer's side, hand resting on his forearm as she laughed. The crowd parted, and I saw how he looked at her. Not like a boss, like a man who believed he'd won. I pulled out my phone and opened the folder labeled Contingency. Documents I prepared years ago, clauses embedded in contracts most people never read. I found Clause 9F, Reputational Protection Protocol. I typed to Chairman Holloway, per Clause 9F, invoking reputational protections. Evidence attached. Review requested immediately. I attached the time-stamped photo showing Paige pointing me toward the exit while Spencer watched. Then I hit send. She thought she dismissed me. She had no idea I just set everything in motion. I didn't stay in that hallway long. Just enough time to watch Paige work the room like she owned it, laughing at Spencer's jokes, touching his sleeve, playing the role of indispensable right hand. 10 minutes, maybe 15. Then I walked back through the service corridor, past the kitchen staff who pretended not to see me, and took the elevator down to the parking garage. My phone buzzed before I reached my car. Chairman Holloway. The message was brief. Received. Emergency board review scheduled, 8 a.m. tomorrow. Your protections are active. I sat in the driver's seat for a moment, engine off, staring at the concrete pillar in front of me. 23 years of building something that mattered, reduced to a single moment of dismissal. But that's how it works in the hotel business. You're only as valuable as your last impression, and Paige had just decided mine was worth less than her ambition. Back in the ballroom, something had already started to shift. I wasn't there to see it, but I heard about it later from 3 different sources, each one painting the same picture. Paige had returned to Spencer's circle, all confidence and charm. She introduced him to a major investor from Singapore, smooth as silk. "Our fearless leader," she'd said, her hand resting on Spencer's arm just a fraction too long. The investor smiled politely, but his eyes were scanning the room. That's when someone from the legacy donor group, an older gentleman named Richard Blackwell, who'd been with us since property number 3, spoke up. "Wasn't that Clayton I saw earlier?" he asked, voice casual but pointed. "Near the service entrance?" Paige waved it off with a practiced laugh. Oh, he's just not feeling well. You know how these long events can be. Her tone was dismissive, final, designed to close the subject. But Richard wasn't finished. He turned to Spencer with genuine confusion. He left already? That's unusual. Clayton never leaves his own events early. Spencer's smile held, but something flickered behind his eyes. Clayton still involved? He asked carefully. Richard blinked. Involved? Spencer, the man founded this company. He still holds advisory board seats, doesn't he? The question hung in the air like smoke. Spencer's executive assistant, a sharp woman named Jennifer who missed nothing, pulled out her tablet and started scrolling. Paige's smile had frozen in place, her fingers tightening around her champagne flute. What's his current title? Spencer asked quietly, directing the question at Jennifer, not Paige. Jennifer found it quickly. Chairman Emeritus. Advisory Board. Also listed as protected founder under Article 7 of the corporate charter. She paused, reading further. There's a notation here about legacy stakeholder protections and reputational safeguards. Spencer's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Reputational safeguards. It's symbolic. Paige cut in quickly, voice light but strained. Just legacy paperwork from the early days. It doesn't mean anything operationally. But Jennifer was still reading, and her expression had changed. Actually, it references Clause 9F, which appears to be active and enforceable. It's tied to board oversight and executive conduct standards. The silence that followed was brief, but heavy. Richard Blackwell was watching Spencer with the kind of expression that said he was recalculating everything he thought he knew about the company's leadership structure. Spencer excused himself smoothly, patting Paige's shoulder once before stepping away toward the hallway where the private offices were located. His assistant followed. Paige stood there, still holding her champagne, smile still fixed, but her eyes had gone cold and flat. Across the room, another conversation was happening. Two board members had pulled up the corporate charter on a phone, scrolling through sections they probably hadn't read since the last merger. One of them, a lawyer named Patricia Vance, stopped on a page and read it twice. Did you know about these founder protection clauses? She asked her colleague. He shook his head slowly. Not in detail. But if someone triggered them, that means there's been a documented breach. Patricia looked toward where Paige was standing, now alone, her confident posture beginning to sag at the edges. If Holloway received formal notice tonight, that emergency board meeting is going to be brutal. By the time the gala ended 2 hours later, whispers had spread through the room like a virus. Not loud, not obvious, but steady. People were asking questions, looking at Paige differently, wondering why Clayton Pierce had left his own anniversary celebration through a service exit. And Spencer Mills, the Golden Boy CEO, was locked in his office making phone calls that sounded increasingly tense through the closed door. 15 minutes later, Spencer emerged from his office, his confident demeanor replaced by something tighter, more strained. He scanned the thinning crowd until he spotted Paige near the bar, still maintaining her polished smile despite the whispers circulating around her. He crossed the room with purposeful strides and took her arm, not gently. His grip was firm enough to pull her slightly away from the small group she'd been working. His face had gone pale, the color draining somewhere between the third phone call and the realization of what she'd done. Do you know who he is to me? Spencer's voice was low, controlled, but there was an edge of panic underneath that Paige had never heard before. She blinked, confused by the sudden shift. What? Clayton? Spencer, he's not just anything. Spencer cut her off, his voice dropping to an urgent whisper. Jennifer just pulled his full profile. Clayton Pierce isn't your has-been ex-husband. He's the protected founder with board-level veto rights. You just publicly dismissed him at his own anniversary celebration. Do you understand what that means? He released her arm and stepped back, running a hand through his hair. I need to make more calls. A lot more calls. He walked away before she could respond, leaving Paige standing alone with her champagne, the first real thread of doubt beginning to wind itself around her confidence. I didn't go home that night. Instead, I drove to my office in the original Charleston property, the one I bought with scraped-together savings 23 years ago. The building was quiet at 2 in the morning, just night security and the hum of HVAC systems. I took the private elevator to the 4th floor, to the office I'd kept even after stepping back from daily operations. The mahogany desk was exactly as I'd left it 3 months ago. I opened the bottom drawer, pushed aside old business cards and a retirement gift I'd never opened, and pulled out a manila folder marked Contingency Protocols, Personal. Inside were documents most people didn't know existed. When Paige and I got married, my attorney, a cynical man named Gerald Hobbs who'd seen too many fortunes destroyed by bad marriages, insisted I protect myself. Love is wonderful, he'd said over scotch in his office. But paperwork is forever. I'd followed his advice. Prenuptial agreement with ironclad asset separation. But there was more. Buried in the corporate restructuring documents from 8 years ago, when we expanded into European markets, I'd included Clause 9F. It was designed to protect founding members from reputational harm during company-sponsored events. Any public dismissal, exclusion, or humiliation by a company representative would trigger mandatory board review and potential executive suspension. Gerald had called it paranoid. I'd called it insurance. Now I spread the documents across my desk. The prenup showed clear separation of assets. Everything I'd built before our marriage remained mine. Her salary, her bonuses, her stock options were hers. But the company itself, the legacy I'd created, that was protected by structures she'd never bothered to understand. My phone buzzed. A text from Gerald, who apparently didn't sleep either. Holloway called me. Board meeting at 8. They want documentation. I'm bringing everything. I typed back. She has no idea what's coming. His response was immediate. Good. Let's keep it that way. I pulled up the security footage from tonight's gala. The hotel's system archived everything, and I had administrative access. I found a timestamp. 9:47 p.m. There was, clear as day, Paige leaning close, her mouth forming the words, her hand pointing toward the service exit. My face, neutral but compliant. And in the background, Spencer watching with that satisfied smile. I downloaded 3 angles, encrypted them, and sent them to Gerald with copies to Chairman Holloway and 2 board members I knew would understand exactly what they were seeing. Then I did something I probably should have done months ago. I opened Paige's company email. As Chairman Emeritus, I still had system-wide access, a detail IT never bothered to revoke because nobody thought I'd use it. Her inbox was organized, professional, nothing suspicious on the surface. But I've been in business long enough to know that the real conversations don't happen in official emails. I checked her deleted folder. Empty, clear daily. So I checked the server backup logs, the ones that archived everything for compliance purposes. They're buried in exchanges from 3 months ago. I found them. Messages between Paige and Spencer. Not about business. About us. One from Spencer. When are you finally going to cut the dead weight? Her response. Soon. Just need to wait for the right moment. He's useful for now, but once the European acquisition clears, I won't need the legacy vote anymore. I read it twice. Then I forwarded it to Gerald with a single word. Exhibit B. By the time dawn broke over Charleston Harbor, I had everything I needed. Documentation, video evidence, internal communications showing premeditation. Paige hadn't just dismissed me at a gala. She'd been planning to erase me from the company I built. At 7:30 a.m., I put on a fresh suit, dark charcoal with a silver tie, and drove to the emergency board meeting. I wasn't going as a wounded husband. I was going as the founder who'd built an empire and wasn't about to let anyone take it without a fight. The boardroom was on the 42nd floor of our Manhattan headquarters, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park. I arrived at 7:50 a.m., 10 minutes early. Chairman Holloway was already there, a man in his late 60s with silver hair and the kind of presence that made rooms go quiet. He nodded when he saw me. No smile, just acknowledgement. Clayton, he said simply. Richard, I replied, using his first name deliberately. We'd known each other for 15 years. He'd been on the board since property number 7. Gerald arrived moments later, carrying a leather portfolio thick with documents. He sat on the table in front of my usual seat, the one at Holloway's right hand. The one Paige probably thought I'd surrendered. The other board members filed in. Patricia Vance, corporate attorney. Thomas Bradford, our CFO. Richard Blackwell, legacy investor. Diana Kemp, hospitality industry veteran. And finally, Spencer Mills, looking like a man who'd slept in his tuxedo and regretted every decision that led him to this room. Paige wasn't there. This wasn't her meeting. Holloway called the session to order at exactly 8 a.m. We're here because Clause 9F of our Founder Protection Protocols was formally invoked last night. Clayton, the floor is yours. I stood, kept my voice level and factual. Last night, at our 25th anniversary gala, I was publicly dismissed from the main event by the VP of Guest Experience and directed to a service corridor. This dismissal occurred in front of donors, board members, and executive leadership. It was deliberate, calculated, and witnessed. I nodded to Gerald, who activated the screen behind me. The security footage played. 3 angles, all showing the same moment. Paige's whispered words, her gesture, my compliance, and Spencer's knowing smile in the background. The room was silent except for the hum of the projector. This is Exhibit A, I continued. Exhibit B is internal communication between VP Pierce and CEO Mills discussing plans to minimize my involvement post-acquisition. Gerald displayed the emails on screen. Paige's words hung there for everyone to read. Cut the dead weight. Patricia Vance leaned forward, reading carefully. These are company emails. Server backups, Gerald confirmed. Archived per compliance regulations. Spencer had gone pale. This is taken out of context. Paige was talking about streamlining operations, not about me. I cut him off, voice still calm but edged. She called me deadweight, Spencer, in writing, while planning to leverage my legacy vote for the European deal, then discard me. That's not operational discussion. That's calculated betrayal. Holloway's expression was granite. Mr. Mills, did you witness the dismissal last night? Spencer hesitated. Fatal mistake. I was aware that Clayton left early, yes. Through a service exit? Another pause. I didn't know the specifics of how he exited. Liar. Richard Blackwell said flatly. I watched you smile when she pointed him away. Don't insult us with selective memory. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Holloway turned to me. Clayton, what remedy are you seeking under Clause 9F? I thought about this all night. I could ask for Paige's termination, for Spencer's suspension, for public apologies and policy changes. But I wanted something cleaner. Immediate removal of VP Pierce from all operational duties, pending investigation. Suspension of CEO Mills, pending board review of his conduct and judgment. And I want my advisory role formally reinstated with full access and voting rights on all strategic decisions. Patricia nodded slowly. That's within your rights under the clause. Holloway looked around the table. All in favor. Every hand went up except Spencer's. Motion carries, Holloway said. Mr. Mills, you're suspended effective immediately. VP Pierce will be notified within the hour. This meeting is adjourned. Spencer stood, face flushed. You can't just. We can, Diana Kemp said coldly. And we did. You should have read the charter before you let your VP humiliate the man who built this company. I didn't say anything else. Just collected my documents and walked out, leaving Spencer standing there, finally understanding that the dead weight he'd tried to cut was actually the foundation holding everything up. I was in my Charleston office when my phone rang at 9:15 a.m., unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. 30 seconds later, it rang again. Same number. The third time I answered. Clayton. Paige's voice, tight and controlled, but I could hear the edge underneath. We need to talk. I don't think we do, I said, leaning back in my chair, watching the morning light hit Charleston Harbor through the window. Don't do this. Her voice shifted. Try for reasonable. Whatever happened last night, we can fix it. I was stressed. The event was overwhelming. I didn't mean. You told me not to embarrass you. I cut her off, keeping my tone even. You pointed me toward a service exit in front of our entire board. That wasn't stress, Paige. That was a choice. Silence on her end. Then her voice came back harder. You had me suspended. Do you understand what that does to my reputation? Your reputation? I laughed, short and humorless. You called me deadweight in an email to Spencer. You plan to use my legacy vote for the European acquisition, then push me out completely. Don't talk to me about reputation when you spent months systematically trying to erase mine. That's not, she started, but her voice faltered. She knew I had the emails. Clayton, please. We can work through this. We're married. That has to count for something. We had a prenup. I reminded her. Everything I built before we met stays mine. Your salary, your bonuses, your options, those are yours. But the company? That was never yours to take. I wasn't trying to take anything. Her composure was fracturing now. I was trying to modernize, to move us forward. You've been stuck in the past, holding on to control you don't even want anymore. I didn't want daily operations. I corrected. That doesn't mean I was ready to be erased from my own legacy. There's a difference between stepping back and being pushed out. You chose to push. Another silence. When she spoke again, her voice was smaller. What happens now? Now, you're suspended pending investigation. Spencer's on administrative leave. The board is reviewing everything, and I've been reinstated with full advisory authority. What happens next depends on what else they find when they start digging deeper. There's nothing else to find, she said quickly. Too quickly. Then you have nothing to worry about. I kept my voice neutral, professional. But if there is something, Paige, now would be the time to get ahead of it. The line went quiet for a long moment. Then she said, I need to go, and hung up. I set the phone down and stared at it. Part of me had hoped she'd show some remorse, some recognition of what she'd done. But all I heard was someone angry about getting caught, not someone sorry for the betrayal. My office door opened. Gerald walked in without knocking, carrying another folder. We found something, he said, his expression grim. You're going to want to see this. He spread documents across my desk. Bank statements, transfer records, expense reports. Your wife has been moving money, Gerald explained. Small amounts, nothing that would trigger automatic flags, but consistent. Over the past 18 months, she's transferred roughly $180,000 from company discretionary accounts into a personal offshore account. I stare at the numbers. That's embezzlement. Technically, it's misappropriation of corporate funds, Gerald said. And it gets worse. Some of these transfers coincide with dates she was traveling with Spencer for property acquisitions. Hotels in Singapore, Dubai, Barcelona. Except the expense reports show they stayed in our competitors' properties, not ours. Why would they do that? Gerald's expression darkened. Because they were hiding. Our hotels have internal monitoring, employee recognition protocols. Competitor hotels? They're just another couple checking in. The implications settled over me like cold water. They were using company money to fund an affair. And potentially more, Gerald added. I'm seeing consulting fees paid to a shell company registered in Spencer's name. Legitimate on paper, but the invoices are vague, and the amounts are suspiciously round. I think they've been planning something bigger than just pushing you out. I looked at the documents, seeing the pattern emerge. This wasn't just about ambition or modernization. This was calculated theft, hidden behind operational expenses and business development. Get this to Patricia Vance and the board, I said quietly. And give me a forensic accountant. I want to know exactly how deep this goes. Gerald nodded. Already on it. But Clayton, this changes everything. This isn't just corporate politics anymore. This is potential criminal fraud. Good, I said, my voice harder than I expected. Then let's make sure they face every consequence they've earned. By noon, the story had spread through the company like wildfire. Paige suspended. Spencer on leave. Whispers about founder protections and emergency board meetings. I'd worked in hospitality long enough to know that rumors moved faster than room service. I was reviewing financial documents in my Charleston office when my assistant, Marie, a woman who'd been with me since property number 4, knocked softly. Clayton, there's someone here to see you. Says it's urgent. Who? Jennifer Marks, Spencer's executive assistant. I gestured for Marie to send her in. Jennifer entered, looking like she hadn't slept, carrying a tablet clutched to her chest like a shield. Mr. Pierce, she started, then stopped. I don't know if I should be here. Sit down, Jennifer. I kept my voice gentle. She wasn't the enemy, just someone caught in the blast radius. She sat, hands trembling slightly. I've been Spencer's assistant for 2 years. I handle his calendar, his travel, his correspondence. I thought I was helping build the company's future. She looked up at me, eyes red-rimmed. I didn't know what they were doing. Not all of it. But I suspected something was wrong. What did you suspect? She unlocked her tablet and turned it toward me. These are Spencer's travel record for the past 18 months. Official company business. But I also keep personal notes because he always forgets details. She scrolled through entries. Dubai, 3 months ago. Official reason was property inspection. But I booked them separate rooms at our property, and the night manager told me they never checked in. They stayed at the Pinnacle Grand instead. That's our competitor. Exactly. And it happened again in Singapore, Barcelona, Amsterdam. Every time, they claimed company business but stayed at competitor properties. When I asked Spencer about the expense reports, he told me not to worry about it, that it was strategic research. Strategic research. I repeated, the words bitter. Jennifer nodded. But there's more. 2 weeks ago, I was filing documents and found a folder on Spencer's computer. It was labeled Post-Acquisition Structure. Inside were organizational charts with your name completely removed. Not moved to advisory, not reduced. Gone. And Page's name was listed as Chief Strategy Officer. That position doesn't exist in our company. It didn't. But according to those documents, it was going to, after the European acquisition cleared and you were, quote, transitioned out. Spencer had already drafted the press release announcing your retirement for health reasons. The manipulation was breathtaking in its scope. Why are you telling me this now? Because this morning, Spencer called me from his lawyer's office. He told me to delete everything. All his travel records, all his personal files, everything related to Paige. He said if anyone asked, I should say I don't remember details. Jennifer's voice shook. He's trying to destroy evidence, Mr. Pierce. And he wants me to help him do it. Did you delete anything? No. I made copies instead. She handed me a USB drive. Everything is here. Travel records, expense reports, the organizational charts, email correspondence I wasn't supposed to see. I'm probably going to lose my job for this. I took the drive carefully. Jennifer, you might have just saved the company. And no, you're not going to lose your job. You're going to be protected. She exhaled shakily. I just couldn't let them get away with it. You built something good here, Mr. Pierce. They were tearing it apart from the inside. After Jennifer left, I plugged the drive into my computer. The files were extensive, meticulously organized. Travel records showing a pattern of deception. Expense reports with forged signatures. Draft documents outlining my removal. And emails between Spencer and Paige that went beyond professional collaboration into something calculating and cruel. One email from Spencer stood out. The old guard doesn't understand modern hospitality. Once Clayton's legacy vote is secured for Europe, we can restructure without his interference. The board won't fight us if we frame it as natural evolution. Page's response. Agreed. He's been checked out for years anyway. This is mercy, not betrayal. I read that line 3 times. Mercy, not betrayal. That's how she justified it. I forwarded everything to Gerald and the board's legal team with a single message. Additional evidence. Source is protected. Spencer is destroying records. Within an hour, Patricia Vance called. Clayton, this is beyond suspension. We're talking termination with cause, possible criminal referral, and full forensic audit. The board is convening again tomorrow morning. Good, I said. And Patricia? I want Spencer's credentials revoked immediately. No more access to company systems. Already done. Building security has been notified. If he tries to enter any property, he'll be escorted out. I hung up and sat in the quiet office, watching the afternoon light change over the harbor. 23 years of building something that mattered, nearly destroyed by 2 people who thought ambition justified anything. But they'd forgotten one crucial detail. The foundation was still mine. And foundations don't collapse easily when they're built to last. The second board meeting convened at 8 a.m. the next morning. This time, the atmosphere was different. Colder. More final. The evidence had been distributed to all members overnight, and the room felt like a courtroom waiting for the verdict. Spencer wasn't there. His attorney had advised him not to attend without immunity guarantees, which the board had refused to provide. But Paige was present, sitting at the far end of the table with her own attorney, a sharp-dressed woman named Helen Cortez who specialized in executive defense. Chairman Holloway opened the proceedings. We're here to address findings from the forensic audit and witness testimony regarding misappropriation of corporate funds, protocol violations, and conspiracy to remove a protected founder. Ms. Pierce, you have a right to respond to these allegations. Page's attorney stood. My client categorically denies any wrongdoing. The transfers in question were authorized under her discretionary budget for brand development and market research. Staying at competitor properties was strategic analysis, not personal benefit. Strategic analysis, Patricia Vance repeated, sliding a document across the table. Then explain why these research trips coincide with romantic getaways. We have hotel staff testimony from 3 properties confirming you and Mr. Mills shared rooms, ordered champagne and room service, and specifically requested privacy protocols typically reserved for honeymoon couples. Paige's face went pale. Her attorney faltered. That's circumstantial. It's corroborated testimony. Patricia interrupted. And it's supported by credit card records showing charges for couples spa treatments, romantic dinner packages, and anniversary suites, all billed to company accounts. I watched Paige's expression crack, the careful control finally breaking. She looked at me for the first time that morning, and I saw something I'd never seen before. Fear. Clayton, she started, voice shaking. Please, you have to understand. I understand perfectly, I said quietly. You use company money to fund an affair while planning to push me out of the company I built. You called it mercy. I call it theft and betrayal. Holloway continued. Ms. Pierce, we also have evidence that you accessed confidential board communications and shared them with Mr. Mills before official distribution. That's a breach of fiduciary duty and potentially corporate espionage. Her attorney tried again. My client was acting in her capacity as VP of Brand Strategy, coordinating with the CEO on strategic initiatives. She leaked sealed acquisition terms to Spencer 3 days before the board vote. Richard Blackwell said flatly. We have the metadata. Those documents were marked board eyes only. She had no authority to access them, let alone share them. The room went silent. Paige's attorney whispered something to her, and I saw Paige's shoulders slump. The board has reached a decision, Holloway announced. Paige Pierce, you are terminated for cause, effective immediately. You will surrender all company property, credentials, and access within 24 hours. Your stock options are forfeit under the misconduct clause of your employment agreement. Furthermore, we are referring this matter to the district attorney's office for potential criminal prosecution. Paige stood abruptly. You can't do this. I have rights. I have contracts. You had contracts, Patricia corrected, which you violated systematically for 18 months. You're done here, Ms. Pierce. Paige looked at me one last time, tears starting to form. Clayton, please. Don't let them destroy me. I met her eyes and felt nothing but cold finality. You destroyed yourself, Paige. I just refuse to go down with you. She left with her attorney, and the boardroom door closed behind them with a sound like a vault ceiling. Holloway turned to me. Clayton, we owe you an apology. We should have been more vigilant. This should never have progressed this far. What about Spencer? I asked. His attorney is negotiating a resignation in exchange for avoiding criminal charges. But he's finished in this industry. Word is already spreading. I nodded. It wasn't victory. It was survival. But sometimes that's enough. I returned to my Charleston office that afternoon, exhausted but clear-headed. The company was intact, the board was unified, and the people who tried to erase me were gone. But there was still one more piece of the puzzle I needed to address. I called Gerald. The divorce papers. File them today. Already drafted, he replied. I'll have them served by end of business. But Clayton, there's something else you should know. What? We found another account. This one's different. It's not offshore. It's domestic. Opened 8 months ago under Paige's maiden name. There's $340,000 in it. I sat forward. Where did that money come from? That's the interesting part. It's not from company accounts. It's from selling stock options she was granted 3 years ago. She liquidated them quietly, moved the cash into this hidden account, and never told you. Why would she hide legitimate stock sales? Gerald's voice went quiet. Because she was planning to leave, Clayton. She wasn't just pushing you out of the company. She was preparing to leave the marriage entirely. This was her escape fund. The realization hit like a physical blow. All of it, the affair, the corporate maneuvering, the systematic erasure of my role. It wasn't just ambition. It was an exit strategy. She was going to take everything she could and walk away. There's more, Gerald continued. We found emails between Paige and a divorce attorney in New York, dated from 6 months ago. She was getting advice on how to maximize her settlement, how to claim emotional distress, how to argue for spousal support based on your wealth. But the prenup, she was planning to challenge it, claim it was signed under duress, that you had unequal bargaining power, that she deserved compensation for supporting your career growth. Her attorney was building a case. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling. 13 years of marriage, reduced to calculated financial planning and legal strategy. She hadn't just betrayed me professionally. She'd been preparing to destroy me personally. Forward everything to my attorney, I said finally. And Gerald? Make sure the DA knows about the hidden account. If she was planning to flee with embezzled funds, that's consciousness of guilt. Already done. Clayton, I'm sorry. I know this isn't easy. It's not, I admitted. But at least now I know the truth. And the truth, as ugly as it is, means I can finally move forward. After I hung up, I sat in the quiet office for a long time. Outside, Charleston Harbor sparkled in the afternoon sun, boats moving through the water like nothing had changed. But everything had changed. The woman I'd married, the partner I trusted, had been systematically dismantling our life together while smiling to my face. But I'd survived. The company was safe. My legacy was intact. And I was free. Sometimes, that's the best revenge there is. 3 weeks after the board meeting, I stood in my Charleston office watching moving crews pack up Paige's belongings from her home. The divorce was proceeding faster than expected. Her attorney had advised her not to fight the prenup once the criminal investigation began. She was facing potential federal charges for wire fraud and embezzlement, and a prolonged divorce battle would only make things worse. Spencer had resigned quietly, taking a severance package that barely covered his legal fees. His reputation in the hospitality industry was destroyed. I'd heard through contacts that he was applying for mid-level management positions at budget hotel chains under a different name. The golden boy had fallen hard. But there were loose ends I hadn't expected. Gerald called me on a Tuesday morning with news that changed everything. Clayton, we found something else. Remember how Paige's first marriage ended? The one she said was amicable, no drama. Yes. She told me her ex-husband was supportive, that they'd grown apart naturally. That was a lie. I tracked him down. His name is Michael Brennan, lives in Boston now. When I told him what happened, he laughed. Said he should have warned you, but figured you wouldn't believe him. My chest tightened. Warn me about what? Paige did the exact same thing to him. Married him when he was building a tech startup, played the supportive wife, then started an affair with his business partner. They tried to push Michael out of his own company. He caught them, fought back, and barely saved his business. She walked away with nothing because he'd been smart enough to have a prenup. I sat down slowly. She's done this before. It's a pattern, Clayton. She targets successful older men, positions herself as the ambitious younger partner, then systematically tries to take over. Michael said she told him once that she was tired of working for other people's legacies. She wanted to build her own, and the fastest way was to marry into one and claim it. The realization was sickening. Everything, from our first meeting in Dubai to the way she climbed through the company, it had all been calculated. I wasn't a husband to her. I was a stepping stone. Michael wants to testify if this goes to trial, Gerald continued. He said he's been waiting 13 years for her to face consequences. He's willing to establish pattern of behavior. Set up, I said quietly. If she's been doing this to multiple men, the DA needs to know. But there was something else weighing on me. The company was secure, but I'd lost 13 years to someone who'd never loved me. That wasn't something a board meeting or a prenup could fix. That evening, I called my daughter from my first marriage. Emma was 28 now, living in Seattle, and we'd grown distant over the years. Paige had always made excuses why she couldn't come to family gatherings, always had reasons why visits were inconvenient. Emma, I said when she answered, I need to tell you something, and I need to apologize. We talked for 2 hours. She'd seen through Paige years ago, had tried to tell me, but I'd been too invested to listen. Dad, she said finally, voice gentle, I'm just glad you're okay. You can rebuild from this. You've done it before. She was right. I had built an empire from nothing once. I could build a life again. 8 months later, I stood in the lobby of our newest property, Legacy Crest Charleston Harbor, a boutique hotel built on the site of the original building where everything had started. It was smaller than our flagship properties, more intimate, designed for people who appreciated history and craftsmanship over trendy minimalism. The board had been restructured. Patricia Vance was now CEO, bringing stability and integrity that had been missing. Richard Blackwell had taken a more active advisory role, and I'd returned to what I did best, creating experiences that mattered, mentoring young hoteliers, building legacy without needing to control everything. Paige had pled guilty to wire fraud and embezzlement in exchange for a reduced sentence. 18 months in federal prison, followed by probation and restitution. Spencer had been named as a co-conspirator but received immunity for testifying against her. His career was still destroyed, and last I heard, he was working night shifts at a budget motel in Ohio under his middle name. But the real transformation was personal. Emma and I were rebuilding our relationship. She'd flown out for the Charleston Harbor opening, bringing her fiancé, a good man who worked in environmental engineering. We'd spent the weekend talking, laughing, and healing old wounds. I'd also started dating again, carefully this time. A woman named Sarah, a professor of architecture at the College of Charleston, who had no interest in the hotel business and thought my stories about hospitality drama were bizarre. She made me laugh. She challenged my assumptions. And most importantly, she had her own life, her own success, and no interest in climbing any ladders but her own. On opening night, I stood at the rooftop bar watching the sunset over Charleston Harbor. The same view I'd seen 23 years ago when I'd bought this property with everything I had. Gerald joined me with 2 glasses of bourbon. To survival, he said, raising his glass. To foundations, I corrected, clinking glasses with him. The kind that can't be stolen or erased. The kind you build with your own hands. Richard Blackwell approached, Emma and her fiancé behind him. Clayton, the mayor's here. Wants to say a few words about legacy businesses and community investment. I nodded, but before heading downstairs, I looked out at the harbor one more time. Paige had tried to erase me from my own story, to reduce me to dead weight in an empire I'd built. But she'd forgotten something crucial. Legacies aren't about titles or positions. They're about what you create that outlasts the betrayals, the setbacks, the people who try to tear you down. I created something real, something that mattered, and no amount of ambition or calculation could take that away. I walked downstairs to join the celebration, surrounded by people who respected what I'd built and who I'd become. Not because I was powerful or wealthy, but because I'd faced betrayal with dignity, fought back with strategy instead of rage, and rebuilt with wisdom instead of bitterness. That, I realized, was the real victory. Not destroying the people who'd tried to destroy me, but proving that their betrayal couldn't define my legacy. The foundation was still mine, and it always would be.